Please welcome Corporate Vice President, Identity Program Management at Microsoft, Alex Simons.
Good morning. I'm really excited to be here at Identiverse. It's my favorite conference of the year, mostly because, it's so open and collaborative. Right? In fact, one of our newest team members over dinner this week was commenting to me, everybody at Identiverse is so friendly. They're so outgoing. It's nothing like RSA at all. It's just so much better. And I was reflecting on that, thinking about, why is it that in the identity industry, there are so many people in all these different companies, and even when we compete, we get along well, and we work on important things together. And I think that is really because there's probably no industry in the world that depends more on open standards, because without them, none of our stuff works. Right? So I really want to spend today talking to you about a set of waves of open standards. It's going to seem a lot like Andrew's discussion yesterday. The key difference is that I'm going to talk about the stuff that actually works, not the stuff that didn't work. So we're going to go through 3 waves of identity standards here. We're going to talk about the first wave, which was really focused on kind of on-premises enterprise identity. We're going to talk about the second wave, which was all about the move to the cloud and the world of devices. That's kind of this wave that we're currently living through. And then I'm going to end with a whole new wave that's kicking off right now around decentralized identity and really enhancing people's privacy and owning their own identities. So to start that, let's talk about the first wave. If you think back, the first wave really kind of started 25, almost 30 years ago. And this is all designed for a world where enterprises had pretty much everything on premise, right? You had your data centers, you had your users, your devices, everything was yours. It was wrapped around your firewall, and your DMZ were wrapped around it. And really you were focused much more on things like, how do I make it super easy for people to get their jobs done? So the first, it's not even really a standard, it's just the thing that people rolled out, right, was enterprise single sign-on. You had a password vault, a user could log into the password vault, and then that would pre-fill forms for them so that they didn't have to know their usernames and passwords for a whole ton of things. This is nice. It gives the end user a super simple experience. It gives IT some control. If I can turn off your access to the password vault, I can make it more difficult for you to get to the applications afterward. Not a bad start. But that leads us to the first really broadly accepted identity standard, which is LDAP. So LDAP is cool, right? It gives me the ability to actually have single shared username and password. I pass that to my application. The application has a nice simple protocol to call to a central directory, check my username and password, prove that I really am who I am, right? So this now is enables the rise of centralized directories, the ability to have one place where an enterprise can control who has access to what, right? And gives me a really nice end user experience. And if you combine enterprise single sign-on and LDAP, you've got some pretty cool solutions. There is a key problem here, though, that you'll recognize. We're passing usernames and passwords all over the place, right? Like I'm now trusting applications with my usernames and passwords. They're in vaults. They're hard to manage. It's just kind of a management and security nightmare, which leads us to kind of the third, I think, kind of what you think of as invention in this space was Kerberos. Right, so now we've got kind of the first broadly accepted token-based system, right? So rather than me giving my username and password to an application, I simply prove who I am to the directory gives me a token, it's a signed token, I give it to the application trusts it because it's signed correctly, and it lets me in. So this is nice, we've now got all those characteristics we were looking for. I get nice single sign-on, I've got the ability to have a centralized repository, and I'm not spreading my secrets all over. This is great, except it really is just meant for inside a single domain, right? It's not meant for inside my corporate firewall. It doesn't really work as we move to the next world. So right about the time that this was all going on, you also have to keep in mind what kinds of security threats were we worried about, right? This was a time when most security threats were about how could you infect a PC, how could you infect a server, how could you take over things like Slammer and Blaster. They were really about almost destructive invasive use of corporate resources. They weren't so much about stealing things from you, right? That's the kind of world that those were designed for. So it's a very different world than we live in now. Today we live in a world where really primarily the focus is on cloud and devices, where still your corporate data center matters, but it is increasingly a smaller and smaller part of the world of compute that enterprises and organizations care about. All of the interesting innovation is really happening out in the cloud, right? These big nodes of cloud compute in Azure and Amazon and Concur and Dropbox and Workday, like all of these really amazing big nodes of cloud compute that everybody wants to take advantage of. And of course, the rise of smartphones and devices, right? And the ability for people to kind of work from anywhere to get to all of these different resources, all outside of the corporate firewall and DMZ. And as Andre was talking about yesterday, this really gives identity a unique role in this world, right? Where now we've become the new perimeter. How do you control all of the access to all of these in a way that's compliant and secure? Well, your identity system does that. But you need some really great open standards because this is a very heterogeneous world. There are millions of different devices all running different OSs. There are millions and millions of different web services all running different stacks. So you've got to find a way to bridge across these. The first really broadly accepted, in fact, you could think kind of the first enterprise-ready version of this is SAML. SAML is a great way especially for browser apps, to enable you to do single sign-on and trust across an enterprise and the cloud or across multiple enterprises. It gives you a pretty nice experience and very, very broadly accepted across the industry. For most of you, you probably think of this as the cornerstone of your federation strategy. Now, SAML's great, except it has a couple of problems, right? So it's very verbose. It's a large protocol. It's kind of hard to get working. And it doesn't really work great for a world where we've got smart devices with smart applications needing to access APIs. So that leads us to the next round, which is the OAuth set of standards. OAuth 1 was a really nice first attempt. It's a super lightweight protocol. It's really good for the world of cloud and devices, especially small devices that aren't particularly powerful. It gives us a key construct that we really need. It differentiates between the user and the device. So now the user acts on their behalf. They delegate some of or authorize, you could say, their privileges to a specific device. The device can then do some things, but we can see that the device is a separate actor from the user, and that's a really nice security construct, and the device can have constrained privileges compared to what the user had. Right, so this is a really great model and is optimized for cloud APIs. It is very, very challenging, though, for developers to implement, which leads us to the current set of what we think of as like the golden standard. Today's best practice is really to use OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. The developer barrier here has gone way down. We have a really nice unified model for both authentication and authorization. It's really well designed for mobile, enterprise, and cloud scenarios, and it has a built-in extensibility model. So for us at Microsoft, we are betting on OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect as the cornerstone of our identity strategy across the whole company. In fact, if you look at our applications, every application that Microsoft writes today, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, on Android, iOS, on Windows, if you look at Teams, if you look at all of our applications, if you look at Azure itself, they are all built from the ground up using OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. Those are the strategic bets that we're making for protocols. And this has really surprises people. A year ago at the European Identity Conference, I shared this data for the first time. If you look at Azure Active Directory, at this time, we were doing at about 10 billion authorizations and authentications a day. 92% of those were OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. 6% were SAML, and the remaining 2% were other older protocols. Since then, that has just continued to grow. We're now at 95% of all of our traffic to Azure AD. This is about 20 billion authentications and authorizations a day now. Use these new modern protocols. So if you were wondering, do these scale? Do they work at enterprise scale? Do they work in for real? No, they work, and they work at gigantic, world-spanning scale. I would encourage all of you to think about these as they're not like emerging standards; they are the standard, right? And this is really where you want to be centered as you think about your organization and how do you take advantage of the world of cloud and devices. Now, as enterprises and organizations move to the cloud, hackers, of course, moved as well, but they've changed their tactics. Right? In the cloud, it's not so much about how do I invade your machine, how do I take over your server. It has really become a world that's much more about how do I take over your identities. And all the analysts agree that probably have cited this one just like I have. 81% of data breaches involve some kind of weak default or stolen passwords. That's a great one from Verizon. We're at the point now, though, where pretty much every analyst firm and all of us know, look, passwords are the problem, right? They're very, very hard for users to use, especially on a mobile device. It's impossible to keep track of a ton of unique, hard-to-crack passwords. In fact, the only people who love passwords are hackers. Right? Like hackers love passwords because once you give something to a human that's really hard for them to do, they start using easy to predict patterns. If you saw Alex Weinhardt's presentation yesterday, he shared some of the data around. For most hackers, it takes only 3 or 4 passwords to be that they just try against a whole bunch of people and they're in. Right? Like this is the weak link in the chain. What do we do about it? Well, the first thing that you should do right away, right, is you should go turn on some kind of MFA, and I'll remind you of this again at the end. This is certainly better than passwords alone. In fact, we know from our internal studies that you can cut your risk of being hacked by about 99.9%. if you turn on any kind of MFA. And you'll hear lots of discussions around, SIM attacks and the man in the middle and all those things. You know what? Yes, those all happen. But even in that world, right, with all of those problems with the current MFA solutions, you're way, way safer. And to some extent, all you have to do, you don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the person who's closer to the bear than you, right? So MFA, look, there are ease of use challenges. It's not entirely secure, but I would highly encourage you to go make sure that you're using it right now. But we're on this search, though, for something better, right? So we've had usernames and passwords for forever. People have generally learned how to use them, but you wouldn't call it convenient. We've gone and we've added on all these various MFA things. You get a text, or you got yourself a Titan key, or heaven forbid you're using OAuth tokens and you actually successfully rolled those out across your corporation. I salute you if you've done that, right? But these are all hard to use and they still have security problems. There's got to be something better, right? We've got to find this better thing. And luckily for the course of almost 4 years now, we've been working together as an industry to invent that better thing and come up with the standards that'll do that. And we're at the point now today where I think we can confidently say that Phyto 2 is that better way. Right? A standards-based approach to doing strong, cryptographically protected, passwordless authentication using really nice form factors that let you do biometric authentication. So we're very, very big fans of Phyto 2. It's now available it's working in Firefox and Edge and almost working in Chrome. The standards are final, so all the standards body work is done. You can go bet on these. And we recently announced that Windows 10 has been certified as a Phyto 2.0 compatible security key, and Google has announced that Android will be as well. Right, so this is going to be already a very, very, on the way to being a very, very broadly adopted set of standards. We're very excited about the Phyto 2 set of capabilities. So to help with that and to tempt the demo gods, I've asked Libby Brown to come up. Libby's a program manager in our team, and she helps lead our passwordless authentication efforts, and she's going to show you some of the cool work we're doing here.
Thanks, Alex. Good morning, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be up here this morning to share with you all, because I know a lot of people have been waiting to see this, our passwordless implementation of Phyto 2 security keys. But along with that, we also have a few other passwordless solutions that might help you along the way, so I'm going to run through those as well. So first, I'm going to log in to Windows Hello. It's fast, it's easy, there were no passwords, and as Alex just mentioned, it is Phyto 2 certified, which brings Phyto 2 keys to almost 800 million active Windows devices. Now, I'm a user in this tenant. I have Azure Active Directory, and I have a bunch of methods I can use to log in with MFA. I have my Microsoft Authenticator, but what I really want to do is create my Phyto 2 security key. And now, coming to public preview in July, it's as simple as walking through a wizard. In this particular key, I'm using a USB, but we've been working with multiple hardware vendors. I'd like to give a shout out to Phyto Technologies, HID Global, and Yubico for working with us to make sure we have a variety of security key form factors that we know will work with our solution. So I'm going to enter the PIN that I already set up. That's where you plod. So I'm going to give it an easy name, So as a user, I might accidentally misplace my Phyto key once upon a time, and I'll need to delete it. And again, this is where I come back, and I will manage these credentials moving forward. So now you see I have not only my Yubico blue, but my Yubico black. Now that's great. I was able to create this key. But I don't want to just use it on this one device. I might want to take it to another shared PC, or maybe even to a home environment where I don't want to join to my corporate resources, but I still need to access them. So I'm going to take the same security key that you just saw me create. We're going to reinsert it. Now I can hit sign in options. I can choose to sign in with that Windows Hello or security key. I'll enter that same PIN. Oh, and my session timed out. Demo gods.
Terry always warns me not to do demos at Identiverse.
And there I'm logged in. You see the access to all my corporate resources. Now, I know every one of you out here probably has an organization that is fully running Windows 10 with the Windows 10 May 2019 update, just like I showed you on this device. But for those of you who might need to log in passwordlessly to another device type, including Android, iOS, or even Mac, we have another passwordless solution for you using the Microsoft Authenticator app and passwordless phone-based sign-in. I'm going to show you the exact same thing. Your users will think it's very similar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to a portal on my Mac. I'm going to log in with passwordless authentication. You'll see that I get a notification to my phone. I use my biometric gesture on the device. And there again, I have access to all my corporate resources on another machine, another operating system. So those are Microsoft's passwordless technologies. Thank you very much. We'll be bringing these out to public preview later this month. Thanks, Alex.
Libby is a daring soul. So the last time I was on stage was 2 years ago at the Cloud Identity Summit, and I told you how we were going to use these technologies to enable 1 billion people within the first year. Here, in fact, is the slide I showed. In retrospect, I might have been a little bit too optimistic. I'd just like to go back and make a little correction here. It's the 2 years of Cloud Identity. Okay, sorry, a little over-optimistic there. But we have made a ton of progress as an industry, and I'm going to tell you about some of the things that we've done to help with that. So in April of 2018, we turned on a private preview in Windows of this. In December of 2018, we turned it on for Microsoft accounts, so you can start using a Phyto key and our passwordless authenticator with those. In April this year, we had Windows 10 certified as Phyto 2 compliant. And then I'm happy to let you know that on July 10th, we'll turn on the public preview of Phyto-based authentication for Azure Active Directory. So that for all, yeah. Since we've turned it on for MSA users, though, we already have more than 800 million users who are now enabled to go passwordless, right? So anyone who, if you're a Microsoft account user, you can go passwordless today. And pretty exciting, actually, 85 million of these people were passwordless last month. Right, so we had 85 million unique individuals who authenticated using a passwordless form last month. So this already is taking off and getting tremendous momentum in our customer base. We're really excited about the work here. And we have to say thank you to the whole industry, right? Because getting the standards in place was really the critical piece of being able to make this happen. This wave isn't done yet, though. Lots of good news there. I want to call out a couple of things. Yesterday, actually, I'll talk about this first. Token binding. So once we get strong authentication in place, the next place the bad guys are going to go is to stealing tokens. There's still a lot of work there to do here. TLS token binding has not gone as well maybe as we had hoped, especially for companies that want to do kind of SSL break and inspect. There's a lot of issues there. So we need to keep working in this industry to find a solution for token replay issues. There's a lot of interesting work happening in the IETF around proof of possession. We think that there's a lot of potential here as well, so we would encourage all of you to pay attention to that. And to please jump in and contribute as you can. And then yesterday, Andre challenged us that, hey, either start using Skim or fix it. Right? I'm happy to let you know we're doing both. Right? We're using it and fixing it. Today, we use Skim with a whole bunch of our partners. So all of these applications, and in fact, nearly 100 more, Workplace by Facebook, Zscaler, Slack, Atlassian, Pingboard, GitHub, Cisco, all of these work with our SCIM automation. And it's proven out at very, very large scale. In fact, last month, we provisioned 6.75 million user accounts into one of these applications using our SCIM connectors. Right? Like, this is a really big win, and we love this standard. It has enabled us to go from taking months and months to enable a new application to weeks and sometimes just days. So thanks again to everybody who has contributed to the SCIM specification. We really, really appreciate it. It's a giant win for, I think, a standard that most people were pretty skeptical about. We have, though, learned a lot in this process, and just a couple weeks ago, we've published a proposed SCIM profile. SCIM is a relatively complicated set of standards to work your way through. We've proposed a new profile which makes it much, much simpler for application developers to be able to do just the things, to understand just the things they need to do for their applications. And you'll be happy to know that Mark Wall, if you're an identity geek, you'll remember that Mark was one of the original authors of the LDAP standard. Mark is authoring this set of standards work for us. If you'd be interested in discussing with him, he's here at the show today. He's in the Jefferson room from 11:30 to 12:20. If you wanted to stop by after his session, he would love to talk with you about how we move that set of standards even further ahead. And then finally, I'm going to close by talking about the next wave of standards, those really that are about decentralized identities and how we build in privacy by design and give people back control of their digital identities. So, as we saw earlier in the morning, lots and lots of examples of breaches, of privacy violations. It just seems like every day when you wake up, there's either another breach or another Cambridge Analytica scandal, right? Like, we've got to find a way as an industry to give people back their privacy and get out of this world where you constantly feel like your identity is at risk. At Microsoft, we believe that this is core to our vision as a company, and that we would really encourage all of you to jump in and join in the party. We think that each individual needs to have a digital identity they own and control. It has to be secure, and it has to be able to give them a way to privately store all elements of their digital identity. It has to be really self-owned. It cannot be something that is controlled by a giant corporation, not us, not Google, not Facebook, not anybody. And it has to be easy to use, and it has to give them complete control over their data. So let's watch a really quick video. This is kind of like an inspiring view, I think, of how we think about this.
Microsoft's cloud identity solutions empower billions of people and millions of organizations to work, play, and achieve more. We live in a world where our digital and physical lives are closely intertwined. From the powerful devices at our disposal to the apps we use to access a rich set of experiences, we are able to interact with each other in ways that were previously unimaginable. Our identity is made up of everything we say, do, and experience in our lives. However, countless apps and services use our identity data in ways that expose us to seemingly endless breaches of our social, professional, and financial data, causing serious problems for many. Not only this, but more than 1 billion displaced people have no path to social and financial freedom. Our mission to empower everyone isn't complete. We need a better solution. A solution that helps put the dreams we all share within reach. Things like educating our children, improving our quality of life, or starting a business. We believe every person has a right to an identity they own and control. One that securely stores all elements of their digital identity and preserves privacy. This self-owned identity must seamlessly integrate into our daily lives, providing us complete control over what we share, who we share it with, and when necessary, take it back. We are joining hands with the diverse community to build an open, trustworthy, interoperable, and standards-based solution that empowers you to own and control your identity. We invite you to join us on this journey at Microsoft.com/ownyouridentity.
So to tell you more about this, I'd like to welcome Ankur Patel to the stage. Ankur's a program manager on the team, and he's been leading our decentralized identity incubation.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. We just got our demo sorted out this morning, so let's see if it all works. Wake up a couple of devices. We've been talking about decentralized identity for about 2 years now, or at least it feels like it for a great long while. The purpose for this work for us, as Alex mentioned, is about what's the next step beyond this current set of waves. And there's a set of scenarios that we just don't think that a centralized identity system is well suited for, right? So this is about augmenting those identity relationships that we have by also recognizing the user as a data controller, in addition to us as a credentials provider, if you will. So we've pulled together a simple demo that shows a student being able to sign into their university website, get a student ID card, and be able to then verify those credentials to get a discount, if you will. Today's world, when people go to school, they typically have still their domain-based credentials, so that's how Alice signs in. But in this case, Alice is able to use her phone, scan this QR code, which would allow her to get a diploma, a signed student ID card, if you will. Lighting on stage, focus the camera, please.
We're not seeing anything on the screen.
Can we get the Mac up as well? Oh yeah, because it's scanning the QR code. And as soon as it actually recognizes it, there we go. So now we should see a prompt. Oh, it's not updating the player. Demo fail. So in this case, I'm doing a fingerprint auth that shows the student ID card that Alice has now. And if she were to go to a textbook website now, like many bookstores do, you'll be able to now verify her student ID using that same student ID card. And if she chooses to, she can give permission to this, right? Notice in all of this, I was able to get that discount as verified. However, I did not have to share identifiable information. In this particular case, Fabricam, the bookstore, was able to verify I'm an eligible student with Contoso, the university, and that's all they needed, the level of assurance, if you will, right? And that's sufficient for a whole lot of scenarios. There are some others where we would need more. Would we mind switching the slide deck, please? So in this case, Fabricam is able to independently verify issuance and the current status of that student membership without relying upon Alice as a trusted presenter, if you will. Much of our internet today works on possession equals entitlement. And in this particular case, Fabricam, the bookstore, holds the risk, so they are able to verify this independently. On the flip side, now that they know that Contoso issued this particular claim to someone in possession of this digital claim like Alice, they're able to independently verify with Alice. And both of them are able to now have their own role in participation in such a scenario. The final one was entitlement, which got the whole thing started. We believe that these three key acts of being able to independently verify issuance, presentation, and status of a claim, including revocation, are the core thesis of much of the business processes. And that's what we've been working on for the last 2 years on proving out. A lot of this work is based on key principles that are based around users can have more than one DID. As the speakers this morning have pointed out, how might we safeguard users' privacy and have them control over disclosing just what they need, right? Clearly, we also know that this needs to resolve across many trust domains. They could be centralized or private networks to public networks like Bitcoin that we've implemented against. All of these cases, however, the user owns and controls the data. The data is stored in a personal data locker, permissions are managed by the user, and they choose to grant permission to it. If we flip that card over for the student ID card, Alice now has a receipt that says she presented this to Fabricam, and she has a durable copy that she doesn't have to hope and pray that the relying party application presents the right level of access control to her. And the final part is compatibility. Going back to what Alex has been talking about, We believe that it's essential that all of these existing, in this case, emerging standards work with existing standards, such as OIDC and OAuth. So what we have just demonstrated is OIDC self-issued being able to authenticate against a decentralized identifier, which is an emerging standard, right? And this is what we believe how we can build a bridge from today's world to this next set of promises that we're talking about. This is a quick overview of the work we're doing in Decentralized Identity Foundation, which is where our open standards work takes place. If this is an important work for you, please join us there. A lot of you in the room are already part of this work, so thank you very much for helping us continue to make progress. We believe this should help us unlock a new class of applications built on open standards. Clearly, if it's an identity that you own and control, it can't be proprietary, as Alex was pointing out. A lot of companies are part of it. We're hoping you'll be some of them to help us make this real. Alex?
Thanks, Hawker. So I'm just going to close by reminding us, look, we're in the middle of the second wave, and we're just starting into the next wave, and we would really love for all of you to help with your participation in the standards bodies and with the adoption of these standards. I always like to close with a call to action, so very quickly, hey, if you're an app buyer or an app builder, please update your policies to make sure that you're using OIDC and OAuth 2. Right? There's no reason to not adopt these standards. They've proven out at world scale. Think about and start getting a plan in place for how you move your existing applications to modern protocols. If you're a Microsoft customer, we would love for you to help us pilot passwordless with Azure AD in 2 weeks when it goes live. Join us in helping advance and simplify the SCIM set of protocols. And then finally, please, if you've got the time and the energy, join the diff, help us define and build this privacy by design future. And then finally, my last call to action, I always like to end with this. If you do nothing else from this conference, please turn on MFA, right? Go home, turn on some multi-factor auth. It will cut your risks by a huge, huge amount. Thank you so much for your time.